How's it going there today? Brandon here, coming to you in the studio in the gallery. Another quick painting video for you. This one's on a smaller 8x10 canvas, and I'm going to be doing a simple sunrise on the lake scene. So if you want to paint along with this one, let's go. Alright, so what I have here is an 8x10 canvas that I'm going to be working on this time, dealing with portrait orientation here. Mostly because I want to have a good sky fade that goes up into a darker color up here at the top, and then have a good bit of these foreground trees visible in there. I'm going to start with a 3/4 inch wash brush, and I've had some questions about the brushes I've used here on the channel. Someone said they look kind of short. Well, this is a 3/4 inch wash brush, camel hair, that is what's being used there. Fairly inexpensive brush, but this is what a new one looks like, and this is what my used one looks like next to it. So yeah, these do look a little bit short, but it's because I've worn this thing out. So a little bit softer on the tips, obviously, as it's new, but I like the effects that I get when I'm painting backgrounds, and particularly with this old worn out one. So I'm going to start out with my old worn out brush, but any brush that'll cover some territory here will do for you. And the first thing I'm going to do here, this is going to be a little bit of a sunrise on a lake, with a couple of foreground trees that are just going to be really dark that contrast against it. I'm going to come in and loosely put some of the colors where I want them on an initial, not even really a full blocking in layer, but just getting some colors on the canvas where I want it. And then I will go back and get more paint on the palette and worry about doing the actual blending, fading of the sky once I've kind of got things situated. So I'm going to start with a yellow with a fair bit of white mixed into it to give me a real pale yellow color, and just define out where the brightest area of my sun is going to likely be, somewhere in that vicinity probably. And then maybe a little bit of that color reflected down into the water. Now I'm going to just add just the slightest hint of red to that, and I'm going to put that color right here in between. This is essentially where the distant tree line will be, and then come on top of that and below that yellow, put our water reflections in. And again, I'm just kind of getting colors in the areas that I'm going to want them to be in. This is, like I said, loosely a blocking in layer at best. Now as I start to move up here, I'm going to start adding in some neutral gray into this mix. If you don't have a just plain neutral gray mix, you can obviously use white and black in equal amounts to accomplish the same thing. I've got some neutral gray, so I'm just going to drop some neutral gray in with the color that I was just working with. And I'm going to keep moving this over to a gray now, with a little bit of that white still mixed into it. Last but not least, start adding just a hint of blue now to our neutral gray. And then in the upper corners, bringing just a touch of black in to darken things down a little bit. I don't really need to fill all that in. I just know that I'm going to be creating a fade going up through there. So that's kind of where I'm headed in terms of my sky fade colors. And then ultimately what we're going to have, and we'll just drop some of it in to give us an idea. I'm going to go into black with a little bit of red in it. So there's going to be a tree line back here. And then here in the foreground, basically a shoreline right here. This is mostly black with a little bit of red mixed in there, maybe a touch of raw umber in it. Just so we're not sticking pure black on the canvas anyway, but pretty close to it. That's given me an idea of where my colors are going to be and how I'm going to try to accomplish this. So I'll give that a minute to dry, and then I'm going to get some more paint on my palette in larger quantities, because working with acrylics, we need to be able to keep this stuff wet so we can blend it, which just means putting a lot more paint on the canvas so we can blend it up before it dries, because I'm going to do this without using any kind of mediums. Alright, I think I'm ready to give this thing a go now. I've got my colors back loaded up here, and it doesn't really matter what shades of these colors you've got. You know, some red, a yellow, a blue, a white, a black. I've got neutral gray that I'm going to use, but it's not, you know, you can use your white and your black as well. And again, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go into yellow, just plain old yellow, and add some white to that to lighten things up. I think I want a little more white on that. I'm going to come in the middle of that with white and just drop white right in there. Now I'm going to add just a tiny bit of red, like we did before, to start oranging things up a little bit. Come right to the top of that. And right to the bottom of this. Tiny bit more red now into it. And I'm going to go right here in the middle. And then just kind of fade that into my yellows that are already there. Touch more red into that, and a touch more white into that. And fade that down a little bit. Now more white, and just a hint of the gray. Now a lot more gray. A little white. Now I'm going into nothing but my neutral gray color. On this brush, it's still got some yellow on it, so I'm going to clean that brush off and get our yellows out of there. Go into our gray mix, and now start adding a touch of blue into it. Add a little bit more gray to that, so not quite that blue just yet. Now I'm going to go and add black to that. more black in the top corner. And just kind of work back and forth and fade these colors to your liking at this point. Now we're going to give that a few minutes to dry, and you know, if we're happy with it, we'll leave it. If we want to tweak it some, we'll come in with a second pass. But right now I'm going to let it dry and see what my product looks like after it's dry. Alright, so for the purposes of this painting, I'm pretty happy with that. I no need to go overboard with it for what I'm doing here. And I am going to go ahead and add my ground here at the bottom. I'm going to go mostly into black again and put just a little bit of red in with it. I've switched over to a 1/2 inch angled brush. Plus I can use the tip of this angled brush when I start to do these tree lines in the distance. So I have brought a fair bit more red into this mix here, just a tiny little bit of titanium white as well to really redden things out. And I'm just using the tip of this little angled brush here to touch in some color back there on this distant tree line at the tops, where we can still see some of that sky glow coming through back there where these are not solid tops of those trees up there. And you know, this can be pretty random. It's however you want to do it. Down through the middle is going to be very solid though. Now we're going to carry some of this down into the water down here in terms of a reflection. And really all I'm going to do is kind of drag this brush ever so slightly left to right with paint kind of dried off of it. To create my reflections down here. Now what we want to do is come into a lot more black and darken this whole thing up that we've been putting that color back there with. Come into the center here and touch on a lot darker color, but leave that more reddish glowing stuff on the outer edges. bringing some of that darker color down into the reflections as well. I don't want as much of that dark color down here in the reflections though. Now down here in my water in a couple of places out towards the end, we're gonna just drag a little bit of that color out. Probably could have left it be, but yeah, I mean, I like to play around with things a little bit, so. Bit of our reflections way off in the distance. I can not get too carried away there. Those back there you really wouldn't see very much. Something like that. Now we need to get to the business of dropping some trees in here in the foreground, and to do that I'm going to keep working with this black and red mix that we've had to start out with. I'm going to go into a lot more black at this point, and it's going to be a similar process to what we did our distant tree line with, but these trees here are going to be so much closer to us where you're going to keep it a lot darker, so a lot more black in the mix here than red this time around. And we may even add just a hint of blue in with all this. Get a kind of a deep purplish looking, almost brown. Who knows what we got going on there, but we know it's not solid black. And I'm going to come in here with this angled brush now and draw in a couple of tree trunks, and you just have to kind of get crazy here and make it happen. These are going to be carried off of the canvas, so you just drop them in where you want them. And maybe we'll do one more somewhere over here. Maybe this one doesn't go all the way up the canvas. Maybe we'll stop it. We'll make it a little bit thinner then. Now we're going to have a lot of area here that's just blotchy limb color, so I'm going to just keep working with that. These are going to be pine trees, we're going to say. So I'm just going to put some solid forms in a few places, especially close to the tree trunk itself. Maybe there's any particular spot of your sky fade back there you're not in love with. You can use this opportunity to cover that up. And down here closer to the brightest area of my sun in the background, I'm going to redden it up a good bit more again and tap in some areas here where we would see a little bit of a reddish glow on the ends of some of these pine limbs that are here closer to the foreground. And then you lay some darker stuff back in away from those edges. So you want a mix of some areas where your paint's kind of drying out off your brush and getting kind of thin on these pine limbs, and then some areas where your paint's a good bit thicker and darker. So you'll have what appears to be outer edges of these pine limbs that are not blocking that much light, and then you have some thicker areas or more limbs are overlapping or whatever that they are blocking out more light. And then we're going to come back in here and actually draw some limbs in when it's all said and done anyway. Now I'm pretty satisfied with the limb coverage I've got there with this. We're going to move to a liner brush now. Go back into our same mix, and we're just going to start drawing some of these limbs in here. Now, in all honesty, we could call that a finished product. What I think I'm going to do, just because I want to, is add a few little very, very slight ripple, kind of calm ripple effects in that water line here at the bottom as it's getting close to the shoreline. All I'm going to do is go into this darkest kind of gray blue color that we used right along that outer edge of that dark part of the sky. So this is mostly a gray with a little bit of blue in it, tiny bit of black. Let's see how close to our color over there. I need to lighten it up just a little bit more with some gray. Alright, so I'm going to just come in here and draw a couple of lines into this darkest color up here that would be getting reflected on the front side of a wave, a little ripple. And then as I move slightly forward now with it, I'm going to add more gray to it to lighten it up again. Now I'm going to add a little bit of white to that to lighten it up even further. So there we have a finished product of a sunrise coming up on the lake, a couple of foreground trees. Hope you guys enjoyed painting along with that one. Until next time, happy painting, everybody.